911, what's your emergency?
Trainer down. Orca has the trainer. We need help right now.
Nestled along the sun-kissed shores of Southern California, Horizon Cove Marine Sanctuary was a sprawling testament to humanity's fascination with the ocean. Its 70 acres of meticulously designed lagoons, shimmering glass arenas, and vibrant marine exhibits drew millions annually, their eyes wide with wonder at the spectacle of nature tamed. At the heart of this coastal empire was the Ocean Symphony, a high-energy orca show that promised breathtaking displays of harmony between human and beast. But on June 12, 2022, what began as a routine performance turned into a tragedy that would sear itself into the annals of marine entertainment. This is the story of Lena Harper, a trainer whose life was woven into the fabric of the sea, and whose final moments laid bare the fragile trust between humans and the wild. The morning of June 12, 2022, dawned bright and crisp at Horizon Cove. The air hummed with anticipation as families poured into the 5,000-seat amphitheater, their laughter mingling with the salty breeze. Children clutched plush orca toys, their faces glowing with excitement, while parents snapped photos, eager to capture memories of the midday show. Backstage, Lena Harper, a 32-year-old senior orca trainer, moved with quiet precision. Her wetsuit hugged her frame, her dark hair was pulled into a tight bun, and her headset crackled with last-minute checks. She paused by the performance tank, her eyes tracking the slow, deliberate circles of Titan, the sanctuary's largest orca. At 11:45 a.m., the show began, the crowd erupting as Lena stepped onto the poolside platform, her smile warm yet commanding. Titan, a 12,000-pound bull orca, was a living legend. Captured off Norway's rugged coast as a calf, he had spent 22 years in captivity, his 24-foot frame a marvel of muscle and scars. His broad dorsal fin, slightly curved from years in confinement, bore the marks of dominance battles with other males. Trainers called him brilliant but moody, a creature of deep intelligence and unpredictable temperament. Over the years, Titan had raised subtle red flags, moments of defiance, jaw-popping displays of agitation, and listless floating that hinted at unrest. In the weeks leading up to that fateful day, his behavior had grown erratic. He lingered at the surface, his responses to cues sluggish, his dark eyes distant. Lena, who had worked with him for nearly a decade, noticed these shifts. She'd spent countless hours by his tank, reading his moods, adjusting her approach. Their bond, forged through years of shared moments, gave her confidence, perhaps too much. The show started flawlessly. Titan breached the water in a perfect arc, his massive body slicing through the air before crashing down, sending a glittering wave over the front rows. The crowd roared, children squealing as water splashed their faces. Lena guided Titan through spins and leaps, her signals precise, her voice steady over the headset. But beneath the surface, something was off. Titan hesitated on two cues, his movements lacking their usual grace. His tail slaps sent deeper reverberations through the pool, a subtle sign of agitation. Trainers on the sidelines exchanged glances, but Lena pressed on, trusting the rhythm they'd built over years. At 11:56 a.m., the performance reached a pivotal moment, a close contact maneuver. Lena stood on a submerged platform, water lapping at her knees, her face inches from Titan's. She extended her arms, signaling for a side swim, a move they'd perfected hundreds of times. Witnesses in Section C later described her calm focus, her hands steady as she locked eyes with the orca. But Titan's gaze shifted, his body tensing. Without warning, he lunged. His jaws, lined with conical teeth, closed around Lena's arm with terrifying force. In an instant, he yanked her into the water, the impact sending a shockwave across the pool. The crowd's cheers turned to gasps, then screams. Some thought it was part of the act. Others saw the horror unfold. Underwater, a desperate struggle began. Titan dove, dragging Lena into the 30-foot deep tank, his powerful tail propelling them through the murky depths. Her wetsuit tore as she fought, her limbs flailing against his unyielding grip. Trainers on the platform scrambled, activating underwater tone generators designed to disrupt the orca's focus. Titan ignored them, his movements frenzied. He thrashed, spun, and dove deeper, holding Lena beneath the surface. Seconds stretched into a minute, then two. Staff threw nets and floating barriers, trying to corner him in the vast tank. A trainer in the adjacent medical pool waved buckets of fish, shouting commands, but Titan's focus was unbreakable. The water churned violently, bubbles rising in chaotic bursts, then fell eerily still. At 12:02 p.m., the emergency dive team arrived, their gear clattering as they prepared to enter the pool. But protocol was clear. No one could enter while Titan remained aggressive. They stood helpless, watching the water for any sign of Lena. The crowd, now silent, was ushered out, parents shielding their children's eyes. At 12:07 p.m., Titan surfaced, his jaws parting as he released Lena. Staff dove in, pulling her limp body onto the platform. Her wetsuit was shredded, her face pale. Paramedics rushed forward, their hands pumping her chest in a frantic rhythm of CPR. The amphitheater, moments ago alive with joy, was now a scene of chaos. Children sobbing, parents frozen, trainers shouting orders. At 12:19 p.m., Lena Harper was pronounced dead. In less than 7 minutes, a life dedicated to the sea, a career built on trust, and a bond forged over a decade had ended in a tragedy that would echo far beyond Horizon Cove. Lena Harper was no ordinary trainer. She was a force of nature, as much a part of the ocean as the creatures she loved. Born in the small coastal town of Astoria, Oregon, Lena grew up with the Pacific as her playground. As a child, she'd spend hours on the rocky shores, her sketchbook filled with drawings of dolphins, her mind buzzing with facts about whales. By age 12, she could mimic orca vocalizations, clicks, whistles, and eerie calls, with startling accuracy, delighting her family and baffling her friends. At 17, she volunteered at a local aquarium, scrubbing tanks and peppering marine biologists with questions about social bonds, echolocation, and behavior. Her curiosity was relentless, her empathy profound. She didn't just study the animals, said her high school teacher, Mrs. Clara Evans. She felt them, like they were part of her. At 25, Lena graduated with honors from Oregon State University. Her marine biology degree focused on cetacean behavior. But it wasn't her academic accolades that defined her. It was her gift for connection. Dr. Marcus Everett, a cetacean expert who mentored her, recalled, Lena had a way with orcas. They'd swim closer when she was near, like they knew she understood them. Her ability to read subtle cues, slight changes in an orca's posture, the flicker of an eye set her apart. When Horizon Cove recruited her at 26, it was a dream realized. She moved to California, her heart full of hope, ready to bridge the gap between humans and the sea. At Horizon Cove, Lena rose swiftly through the ranks. Her performances were mesmerizing, not for flashiness, but for their quiet authenticity. Visitors remembered her by name, drawn to her infectious passion. New trainers shadowed her, scribbling notes as she explained how to interpret an orca's mood or adjust a routine for their comfort. But Lena's true work happened behind the scenes. She was a tireless advocate for the animals, pushing for larger tanks, more enrichment toys, and less focus on crowd-pleasing tricks. We don't own them, she'd tell her colleagues. We share a space, a trust. It's a privilege, not a right. Her bond with Titan was extraordinary. She'd spend hours by his tank, watching his slow circles, noting his moods. She knew his jaw pops signaled stress, his listless floating hinted at boredom. She'd bring him new toys, buoys, ropes, even a giant rubber ball, and adjust his routines to keep his mind engaged. Titan's not a machine, she once told a supervisor. He's a partner. If we don't listen to him, we're failing him. But the marine park industry, driven by ticket sales and spectacle, often sidelined her pleas. Lena persisted, believing that respect, not control, was the key to coexistence. Horizon Cove was a marvel of human ingenuity, its lagoons carved into the coastline, its glass arenas gleaming under the California sun. The Ocean Symphony was its crown jewel, a choreographed ballet of orcas leaping, spinning, and splashing in perfect sync. To the public, it was pure magic, a glimpse into a world where humans and predators danced in harmony. But behind the applause lay a darker truth. The Orca program, launched in the 1980s when capturing wild orcas was still legal, was built on a fragile illusion. Early shows were simple, showcasing the animal's raw power. Over decades, they grew elaborate. Trainers surfed on dorsal fins, kissed snouts, and dove in synchronized routines, all to the delight of cheering crowds. Titan's story mirrored that of many captive orcas. Captured at 3 years old, he was torn from his pod in the icy waters of Norway. In the wild, orcas travel up to 100 miles a day, hunt in tight-knit families, and communicate in dialects unique to their pods. In captivity, Titan's world was a 40 by 80-foot concrete tank, his social group a mismatched collection of unrelated orcas. His diet, once varied by the ocean's bounty, was reduced to buckets of dead fish. His mind, built for vast distances and complex bonds, was confined to repetitive routines. Dr. Clara Mendoza, a cetacean behaviorist who consulted for Horizon Cove in the 2010s, described the toll. "You're not just putting an orca in a tank, you're putting its mind in a cage. Stress, boredom, isolation. It builds and sometimes it breaks." Titan's behavior had raised concerns for years. Internal logs, rarely shared with the public, documented his incidents. Refusing cues, snapping his jaws, lunging at barriers during training. None had caused injury, but they were warning signs, noted and filed away. Trainers whispered about his mood swings, his occasional refusal to eat, his tendency to float listlessly for hours. Lena saw these signs too, and pushed for change. More space, varied routines, anything to ease the monotony. But the industry's priorities were clear. The show must go on. Titan remained a star, his leaps drawing gasps, his presence filling seats. Experts had long warned of the risks. Dr. Mendoza, in a 2021 lecture, explained, "Orcas are sentient. They remember, they grieve, they strategize. In captivity, their world shrinks to a fraction of what they need. That frustration can manifest in ways we can't predict." Studies backed her up. A 2022 marine science article found that captive orcas exhibit abnormal behaviors, self-harm, aggression, lethargy, far more than their wild counterparts. Male orcas, like Titan, were especially prone to stress-related outbursts, their size and social needs amplifying the strain of confinement. Yet Horizon Cove, like many marine parks, downplayed these concerns, banking on trainers like Lena to maintain the illusion of harmony. Lena's death plunged Horizon Cove into chaos. The amphitheater was sealed, its glass walls reflecting only silence. Scheduled shows were canceled, visitors escorted out under a cloud of shock. By sunset, the park issued a terse statement. "We are heartbroken to announce the passing of our beloved trainer, Lena Harper, in a tragic incident during today's performance. Our thoughts are with her family, friends, and team. We are cooperating fully with authorities to investigate." Reporters swarmed the gates, but Horizon Cove went silent, refusing further comment. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration launched an immediate investigation, combing through incident logs and interviewing staff. Federal wildlife officials arrived, their clipboards heavy with questions about Titan's care. Veterinarians conducted behavioral assessments, noting his listless circling in the holding tank. Hours of show footage were analyzed frame by frame, revealing Titan's hesitations, his aggressive tail slaps, the subtle tension in his movements. The autopsy report, released within 48 hours, painted a grim picture. Lena had sustained catastrophic injuries, blunt force trauma to her chest and abdomen, 6 fractured ribs, a dislocated shoulder, and pulmonary hemorrhaging. Drowning was the official cause of death, but the medical examiner noted that the trauma alone might have been fatal. The public response was immediate and visceral. Leaked details fueled a media frenzy. Headlines screamed, "Killer whale kills trainer at Horizon Cove," and "Tragedy rocks marine sanctuary." News channels looped footage of Lena waving to the crowd, her smile radiant moments before the attack. Social media exploded with hashtags, "Shocker Justice for Lena," "Shocks Free Titan," "Shocks End Captivity," each post amplifying the outrage. Protests erupted outside the park, with animal rights groups waving signs and chanting, for the release of all captive orcas. Memorials sprouted along the entrance. Flowers in shades of blue and white, handwritten letters, photos of Lena in her wetsuit, her eyes bright with purpose. Some mourned a fallen trainer, others demanded systemic change. The tragedy wasn't just a singular event, it was a flashpoint. A decade earlier, in 2010, a trainer named Sarah Mitchell was killed by an orca named Coda at a rival park. That incident sparked a documentary, Ocean's Price, which exposed the psychological toll of captivity and led to new regulations. But the industry adapted, tweaking protocols while keeping the shows alive. Lena's death reopened those wounds, reigniting debates about the ethics of marine entertainment. Dr. Mendoza, interviewed by the Coastal Times, said, "We've known for decades that captivity stresses orcas. They're not machines. They're sentient beings with needs we can't meet in a tank. When they lash out, it's not malice, it's desperation." Lena's death was not an anomaly, but part of a disturbing pattern. Marine biologists have long documented the impact of captivity on orcas. In the wild, they roam vast oceans, hunt in pods, and form bonds that last decades. Their brains, among the largest in the animal kingdom, support complex emotions and social structures. In tanks, their world is reduced to concrete walls, a strict feeding schedule, and artificial pods of unrelated orcas. A 2022 study in marine science found that 70% of captive orcas exhibit stress-related behaviors, repetitive swimming, chewing on gates, or aggression toward tank mates. Male orcas, like Titan, face heightened risks due to their size and social dominance, which captivity disrupts. Horizon Cove's own records revealed a history of concerns about Titan. Trainers had documented his mood swings, days when he'd refuse cues or snap his jaws in frustration. In 2022, he lunged at a barrier during a training session, startling a junior trainer. Shortly before the tragedy, he stopped eating for 2 days, a red flag noted but not acted upon. These incidents were filed away, shared only among staff. Lena had pushed for changes, advocating for a larger tank, more enrichment, and fewer performances. "He's telling us he's struggling," she wrote in a memo to management, but the park's focus remained on revenue. Each show drew thousands, each ticket a piece of a multi-billion-dollar industry. The public, dazzled by the spectacle, rarely saw the cracks. Families marveled at Titan's leaps, unaware of the stress behind his eyes. Trainers, bound by loyalty and love for the animals, accepted the risks. Lena herself had said, "I know it's dangerous, but I trust Titan. He's not a monster, he's a partner." But that trust, built on mutual respect, couldn't erase the reality of captivity. As Dr. Mendoza put it, "You can love an orca, train it, bond with it, but you can't change what it is, a wild predator in a world that's too small." In the weeks following Lena's death, Horizon Cove faced mounting pressure. Animal rights groups picketed daily, their signs reading "Freedom for Orcas" and "Lena deserved better." Petitions to ban captive orca programs gained millions of signatures, circulating on platforms like X. Lawmakers, spurred by public outcry, revived stalled bills to phase out marine mammal captivity. The park, once a symbol of wonder, became a lightning rod for criticism, its glass walls reflecting a fractured industry. Horizon Cove responded with unprecedented changes. In-water performances were suspended indefinitely, trainers reassigned to dry stage interactions, emergency protocols were rewritten, with new fail-safes for trainer safety. A task force of marine biologists, behaviorists, and even former park critics was assembled to overhaul the orca program. Enrichment became a priority. Floating platforms, puzzle feeders, and varied routines were introduced to stimulate the orca's minds. Titan's tank was retrofitted with new barriers, though it remained a fraction of the ocean he'd once known. The Ocean Symphony, once the park's pride, was quietly scaled back, its posters replaced with educational displays about wild orcas. Lena's family, shattered by loss, channeled their grief into action. 6 months later, they launched the Lena Harper Foundation, dedicated to marine mammal research, trainer safety, and ethical wildlife stewardship. The foundation funded studies on wild orca populations, advocating for conservation over captivity. Scholarships supported young scientists, many inspired by Lena's story. Donations poured in from around the world, each contribution a tribute to her legacy. At a candlelight vigil by the main tank, trainers stood in silence, their wetsuits zipped, heads bowed. Flowers floated on the water, their petals catching the moonlight. Titan circled below, his silence a haunting reminder of the bond he'd shared with Lena and the tragedy that ended it. Colleagues remembered Lena not as a thrill seeker, but as a caretaker. Trainer Emily Voss, her voice breaking, said, "She didn't see the orcas as tools. She spoke to them like equals. That's what made her special." Another trainer, Javier Ruiz, added, "She knew the risks, but she believed in the connection. She believed we could do better by them." Lena's death became a catalyst, forcing the industry to confront its flaws. The public, once enchanted by orca shows, began asking harder questions. Is entertainment worth the cost? Can we justify caging a predator for our amusement? Lena Harper's story is a tapestry of passion, trust, and heartbreak. She lived for the ocean, pouring her soul into the creatures she loved. Her death, violent and sudden, exposed the cost of captivity, not just for orcas, but for those who dedicate their lives to them. It forced a reckoning. Can true connection exist in a system built on control? Can we claim to love an animal while denying its nature? These are not easy questions, but they are necessary. Horizon Cove has changed, but the work is far from done. The Lena Harper Foundation continues to push for reform, funding research into orca behavior, and advocating for sanctuaries where retired orcas can live closer to their natural state. If this story grips you, subscribe, like, and share this video with friends. We bring you true wildlife stories that demand to be remembered, understood, and learned from. Respect the wild, and we'll see you in the next video.